Buenas tardes. I'm Dr. Jamie Mathias, Executive Director of MASBA, the Mexican American School Boards Association. Thank you for joining us for this 10-week webinar in which we've been exploring the impacts of this pandemic on our Latinx students and English language learners, and what it is that we can do as superintendents and school board members to better advocate for them during this legislative session. Before we get rolling, just a quick note on the CECs, the continuing education credits for school board members as a result of this webinar. Our GoToWebinar platform is tracking attendance, and we'll send you a certificate at the end of this 10-week series for all of the webinars that you've participated in. At this time, I'd like to invite forward Angel Collado from Southwest Food Service Excellence. For those of us who know our friends at SFE, they've been longtime champions of MASBA's mission of closing gaps in our Texas public schools. But in addition to that, they provide the most nutritious meals for our students, and they help to take off that burden from our school districts, helping us to be able to keep our students well fed and excited about school lunches. Welcome, Mr. Collado. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you, Jamie. I appreciate it, and I appreciate the kind words. You know, it's been great, you know, these past few years, pairing with MASBA, being a part of your guys' mission and contributing to that. You know, who would have thought a year ago today, you know, the world started tackling the growing issue of COVID. And in its wake, you know, we saw communities and districts banding together to persevere, departments and administrators across all levels, bringing up new ideas and innovation. And even within our own company, creating new ideas to keep the children fed, keep them engaged, keep them interested and wanting to both be fueled to learn and to also eat healthy and nutritious meals. You know, this year for our company, you know, just like with everyone else, we didn't want to detract from our mission, providing quality meals and great meals for the students, as well as, you know, keeping a balanced budget for the districts, even among a COVID world. So, you know, as we look to the future, we continue to provide this innovation, provide great food, and provide the support to all our partners across all of Texas and across the nation with all of our district partners.
Awesome, Angel, really appreciate your time to be with us today, your sponsorship of this webinar, but also please share our gratitude with all of our friends at SFE, Southwest Food Service Excellence. We so greatly appreciate y'all, your service, your support of MASBA, but also your service to our school districts here in Texas. Just a shout out for SFE to all the superintendents and school board members who are listening to us today. Don't be bashful about looking up our friends from SFE and learning more about how it is that they can help our districts. Thank you, Mr. Collado.
Yeah.
And now it's my great pleasure to welcome State Representatives Rafael Garcia and Gary Vandivers. What a pleasure to have you both with us today as we talk about the impact of this pandemic on our students. How are you both doing today?
Doing great.
Awesome.
Doing well.
So glad to have you both with us today. I'm wondering if we might invite you to introduce yourselves to those who are listening. We have lots of superintendents and school board members who are with us today and who will be watching this video afterward. But for those who may be new school board members or new superintendents who may not know you, I'd like to invite you to introduce yourselves, but maybe also to share your public education story. That is to say, I'm a product personally of 13 years of public education, so I credit a lot of my present success to our public schools and the foundation that they gave me. Tell us who you are and tell us about your connection to our Texas public schools.
Superintendent, you want to go first?
Oh, we have a superintendent, Representative Vandivers. Tell us who you are and tell us your public education story.
Sure. Yes, I am absolutely a product of public education and proud product of public education, I might add. And I also was privileged to have a 33-year career in public education as a teacher and principal and superintendent. So, you know, as I said, I am a product and a huge fan of public education. I truly believe in the importance of public education, and I believe public education truly is the key to the future of Texas and so many of our students. So yeah, thanks for having me.
Thank you. Tremendous. Glad to have you here as a former superintendent, but also now as a member of the House Public Ed Committee. State Rep Vandivers, thank you for being here with us. State Rep Garcia, who are you and what's your public ed story?
So my name is Rafael Garcia. I've served in the state legislature now. I'm in my 9th term. Had the extreme good fortune of serving as Representative Vandivers' desk mate for a time for part of that legislative service, where I got to witness firsthand his commitment to public education. Obviously I'm a son of immigrants to this country. Both of my parents emigrated from both Mexico and the Basque Country in northern Spain in the mid-50s to seek a better life. And my public education story is one where I accessed that, what I call the infrastructure of opportunity in public schools, from pre-K all the way to graduating from high school. But it's much deeper than that, because not only did I go to high quality public schools, but as the son of immigrants, we lived in a new immigrant community where we had people from all over Latin America. My high school was probably 85–90% Latino, and we were from all over. We were from Mexico, we were from Cuba, we were from Nicaragua and El Salvador and Colombia and the Dominican Republic, and I attribute any success, any limited success that I've had in my life to that public education experience. The other thing that I'd mention is I also watched my mom go to community college, right? My mom, again, who emigrated from Mexico City, she went to community college. I watched her work day, go to school at night, and then went to our neighborhood four-year university. And then she became a public school teacher where she taught for 30 years. And she was a first grade bilingual and also for a time ESL speaker, again, teaching new immigrants in our neighborhood. In fact, she was student teaching at the elementary school that both my sister and I went to. If you're trying to follow along at home, I went to the same high school as both Jose Canseco and, more importantly, Pitbull. So you get a sense of what my neighborhood was like in growing up. And then finally, I would add that when I was a baby lawyer in Dallas, it was 94, 95. I got to be principal for a day at Sunset High School, which is my neighborhood high school here. And in talking to the principal, I was asking him about programs that made a big difference in my life, whether it was, moot court or mock trial or debate, and I even got to participate in a court observer program, which caused me to be interested in becoming an attorney. And the principal said, yeah, we don't really have a debate team, and we don't have a mock trial team. So I said, well, sign me up. And I got our law firm to adopt the school, set up the mock trial team, help coach the debate team until they brought in a debate coach. And then that caused me to want to be a school board member. And so I ran for the school board in 2000. I was elected in 2001 and served on the Dallas school board for 3 years. And that's when we passed the then historic $1.4 billion bond package and helped reset, along with our Austin superintendent, Mike Moses, former commissioner of education, whom I have a great deal of respect for. We got to reset the district, and I think the work that we did back then was helpful to get us to the amazing work that Superintendent Hinojosa is doing today.
Tremendous. Welcome, State Representative Vandiver and State Representative Garcia. We are so excited to have the perspectives of both of you as a former superintendent and a former school board member addressing these superintendents and school board members. At MASBA, the Mexican American School Boards Association, we like to talk in terms of glows and grows. So let's start on a positive note. It was 1 year ago today, on February the 29th, that we had the first death due to COVID here in the United States, and 2 weeks later, COVID shuttered our public schools here in Texas. We had to reinvent public education, establish a new normal for our students and those who serve them. My first question for the two of you is, what are some of the glows? What are some of the things that have made you proud of our Texas public schools during these past 50 weeks? Should we start with you, Representative Garcia?
All right. I always try to talk when I'm on mute at least once a meeting, so I got that out of the way. So the one thing I didn't mention at the outset is I've got two DISD public school high school students that have gone through this pandemic, and they've been incredibly resilient. But what it's allowed me to do is see how teachers have stepped up. I mean, literally, the public education infrastructure has had to do fix the plane while flying it at the same time, which is a really hard execution. And I got to tell you, at least in the case of my two children, they haven't missed a beat. You know, I get shushed about 10 times a day for talking too loud, including right now, because they're trying to concentrate, my junior and my freshman in high school. And other than having broadband limitations here at the house, they've done really, really well. Their grades are good. It's allowed me to take a more active role in not only parenting, but also in helping them with school. The teachers have been amazing. Administrators have been amazing. And, you know, despite the hiccups that we've been seeing, I really want to honor our school personnel, because they've been out in the community spread. They have had no respite, no ability to work from home. And they've done amazingly well to keep us on track. You know, I don't think this is the new normal. I hope it's not the new normal. I still believe that the best place for kids is in our public schools. It's the safest and most productive place. And it also helps families, right? It helps allow women to re-enter the workforce. I know they've been hit hard during this pandemic. A high percentage of women have had to leave the workforce because kids have been doing virtual schools. So I think we'll be resetting. I will say, however, that this experience has provided us with some great learning, to where certain course offerings will be, I think, virtual. We'll be able to have efficiencies where students will be so used to virtual school that if they want to take a class, and I know this was offered previously, but I think it'll be more ubiquitous, where if they want to take a class in an AP subject that may not be offered on their campus, virtual school will enhance the offerings to our kids so they can get a global education.
Tremendous. Thank you, State Representative Anchia. State Representative Vandiver, what has made you proud of our public schools during these last 50 weeks?
Yeah, and I would just echo many of the remarks that you just heard. You know, I think this has been a great opportunity. Those of us who are connected with public education, we've known forever the dedication of our teachers, and that our teachers love what they're doing. They love their students. But we saw that really, I think, rise to a new level during this pandemic. You know, I had in my district teachers and bus drivers, by the way, jumping on a bus and taking meals out to students, taking hotspots out to students, and just that interaction, just really, in my opinion, just rising to hero status. You know, in the way they have, you know, made sure that their students' needs were taken care of, and that's just been to me just amazing to watch as these professionals have really stepped up, and you know, it has, I think, the ability to in my area really construct an online school in a matter of days, and really have it functioning and functioning at a high level, I think has been just tremendous. And so, you know, I just can't say enough for just the adaptability, the resilience of our public education community to step up, and again, it goes, I think it goes to the heart. I think you know, they have a heart for their students. They want to see their students succeed. They want to see their students' needs met, even if it means taking a meal to their students. And so, you know, it just, I think I have more reason now to be somewhat infuriated when I hear people suggest that maybe our teachers are just, you know, are not professional, or not in, they're in it for the money, or, you know, they in it for summertime, you know, whatever we hear. You know, I think this has totally debunked all of that.
Yeah. Thank you, State Representative Vandiver. Really appreciate the perspective of the two of you. Here at MASBA, when we talk about glows and grows, what about the grows? And we'll start with you, maybe State Representative Vandiver first on this one. What are some of the grows? That is to say, hindsight is 2020, but are there certain challenges related to this pandemic that maybe the two of you have wished that our public schools might have better handled? How's that for a question?
Well, you know, again, I don't know that what I have to say would be that our school, that I wish our schools had better handled, but I do think that we certainly saw an opportunity to realize the gaps we have in broadband in many of our school districts, in many of our communities. And, you know, for me, it's a rural issue, but we have deserts in urban areas as well, you know, broadband deserts. And so, you know, I think we certainly see now the lack of good broadband coverage we have throughout the state. And I think that's going to be a real priority for us. I hope it's a real priority for us here in the legislature and as we move forward. And again, I think one thing that has become very clear is the importance of that teacher in that classroom. And as we've made this virtual instruction work, and again, hats off to those who have done it, I think we see that there is really not a replacement for that teacher and that student interaction in person, and the importance of having that teacher in that classroom. So again, not really a knock on anything that the schools have done. It's just that I don't think we had the infrastructure in place to allow them to really do what they needed to do.
Yeah, appreciate that perspective, State Representative Vandivers. State Representative Anchia, any grows? Oops, we'll have you on mute there. There you go. You're being very polite. There you go.
Okay, sometimes I do it twice in a meeting. So look, we saw, we knew that there was a pretty material digital divide. Much of that was ameliorated by the fact that kids had access to Wi-Fi, school issued computers, hotspots at school. We would see the occasional case of, on the weekends, kids needing to drive up to the school and camp onto the open access Wi-Fi to do just basic things for their families, especially in families where you have parents who are Spanish language dominant and kids are having to serve as translators and sort of really mini adults to help their parents navigate in regular life, just to do life, right? And I remember having some of those experiences with my father as well. And so we knew we knew the divide was there. We didn't realize how wide it was. And whether you're talking about urban areas or rural areas where you have either lack of infrastructure or high degree of poverty, I mean, I've seen it in my own family. When I've got Rebecca and the two girls on Wi-Fi at the same time, somebody gets bounced, right? Even with our best efforts and the fact that on a relative basis, I'm probably a 1 to 3%er in America, and we spend a couple $100 a month on our connectivity package, we get dropped. So I cannot imagine the very large numbers of families without a desktop, a laptop, a reliable hotspot, Wi-Fi access. I can't imagine having 3, 4 kids in a house trying to do school at the same time, many of whom are having to share the one, hardware piece for connectivity, which is the phone. That's a really difficult execution, and one that Gary said this perfectly, one that we're going to have to tackle in the legislature, because it's not a criticism of our public schools. It's really more an opportunity to reflect in the legislature about how we can offer more connectivity to people in urban and rural areas. And you know what that's going to do? It's just going to make us more competitive as a state. I mean, we're the 9th largest economy in the world. Our economy is bigger than Russia's, interestingly enough, bigger than Australia's, bigger than South Korea's. We always think of South Korea as a kind of a technology innovator. If we build out this infrastructure, it will not only inure to the benefit of students, it's going to make us, grow human capital and make us more competitive economically and globally.
Thank you for that perspective, Representative Anchia. For those who may be joining us, the superintendents and school board members who may be a bit more new in their positions, we find ourselves in the middle of a very different legislative session. We have about 90 days left in this session. So I'm wondering if you might offer us a perspective, maybe looking back on what's gone on this session so far, but also looking forward, what might we expect to occur during the last 90 days of this session? Maybe we'll start with you, Representative Anchia, and then look to State Representative Vandivers after that. What's happened so far during this session, and what is still to come?
Well, I'm always struck by how quiet the Capitol is these days. Usually, we're blessed with the presence of school children and parents, and both Representative Vandivers and I are giving Capitol tours and engaging with people in our offices on a regular basis. None of that's happening. It's a byproduct of 3 things, really. After the insurrection at the U.S. Capitol, we really had to shut things down at our Capitol, and Representative Vandivers and I were getting security briefings from the Texas Department of Public Safety, because there were credible threats being made against all 50 capitals, and law enforcement had to take it very, very seriously. And even today, you'll see an enhanced law enforcement presence. The second thing is the pandemic. Obviously, we have new protocols in place where people can test to come into the Capitol, but that testing is cumbersome. People have to wait outside for 15 minutes, before they get their rapid test, and it's not like you can just come straight in with a class of 50, high school students anymore. That's just a much more difficult execution. And then finally, we lost power in this state, for a solid week, and that really impacted our ability to meet. And while virtual legislature works to some extent, just like virtual school works to some extent, it really is suboptimal, and it's caused things to slow down for us in the legislature. While the Speaker of the House is doing a great job of assembling committees and putting talented people in the right places, we really haven't been able to meet yet. We had our emergency investigative meetings about the ERCOT and the PUC last week, and I had the pleasure of sitting through about 30 hours of that to try to get to the bottom of the the 12 million, 14 million Texans without water and 4.5 million Texans without power, and that's going to occupy a lot of our legislative oxygen this session. And that, in addition to a competent distribution of the vaccine, that's going to occupy a lot of legislative oxygen. And then finally, balancing the budget so we can keep our promises that we made in HB3 to public education. We cannot backslide after 2 years. That's a non-starter for people like Gary and me. And I know for you all, we have to make sure we keep our promises. So retrospectively, it's really slowed things down. I think it's going to be a very low bill count session. You're not going to see, first of all, you're not going to see any bills that cost money pass, right? That's just, we instead will focus on technical fixes. And when I say no bills that cost money, the big bills, if they cost money, like infrastructure funding, absolutely they're going to pass, and we're going to do that. But if we all have pet initiatives in our districts that are, is what they call budget dust sometimes, $100,000 here or $50,000 there or $1 million, right? And we try to get those things in the budget. I think that's going to be much harder to do this time around. So passing reforms and legislation, maybe fine tuning some things around HB3, that now that we have 2 years of learning or giving it a little bit more time, I think that's going to be the focus of this session. And we're off to a slow start. Very few bills are going to pass, and we're going to, in a way, it's going to be nice because we're going to keep the main thing the main thing.
Awesome. Appreciate that, State Representative Vanchia. State Representative Vandivers, where have we come so far during the session, and what can we expect during the next 90 days?
Yeah, I agree. We are on a slow start. I think we anticipated that coming in, that it would be a slow start, and certainly the ice storm last week just made that even more so. I agree. HB3, keeping our promises we made in HB3 is going to be a priority, and I'm confident we will do that. I believe the money is there for that, and I believe we have widespread support to do that. So I feel very good where we are with HB3. I think there will be an HB3 cleanup bill. I don't think, I know that it is in the process of being developed and filed. About 3 weeks ago, I was told that the cleanup bill is 60 pages. So it's huge. That's larger than most bills. But HB3 was a really large bill. So I guess you would expect cleanup to be pretty sizable as well. I don't know at this point really what's in the cleanup, but I think it will maintain all of the major programs and initiatives that we found in HB3, all of the good things, and I think we've been very pleased with what we've seen so far in the HB3 initiatives. Some of them are not fully implemented, partially due to COVID, partially just due to the amount of time it takes to roll out some of those initiatives. But teacher incentive allotment, I know, is one thing that is only partially rolled out at this point, and I think we will see it continue to be rolled out in other districts as we move forward. But I think that's going to be the big thing. I think as far as education, I think, the cleanup to HB3 is really going to take most of the air in the room as far as education, because we're going to have these other issues, the issue of the power failure and everything that we experienced, trying to get to the bottom of that and see what we need to do as a legislature to ensure that doesn't happen again is going to be important. And then, of course, the vaccine and other responses to COVID is going to be huge for us. So, and again, going back and taking care of the digital divide that we know we have, trying to, ensure that we close that divide, the broadband access. So, in a way, it's kind of nice, because I think we are going to be able to focus on the main thing this time, just because we don't have any choice. And so that's sort of refreshing for us who would like to focus on the main thing anyway. It's really kind of a fun session, because we're not dealing with some of those silly things, that sometimes work their way into the legislative process.
I love it. Appreciate that perspective, State Representative Vandivers. We're going to pause and simply invite our superintendents and school board members to ask any questions that are percolating in their minds. There's a question box in the tab on the right-hand side, so if you'd like to ask a question of our state representatives, please feel free to type that into the questions box. State representatives, all of our school board members and superintendents have the same question. How can we best advocate for our students and for our Texas public schools during this very unusual pandemic legislative session? Thoughts on that? I'll let you both flip a coin and determine who goes first there, but how can we best advocate for our students during this very unusual session?
So I'll take a first stab at that. Look, both Representative Vandivers and I have a close relationship with TASB. I mean, that funneling legislative priorities through those very effective groups is great. I did leadership TASB when I was a school board member, and I think very highly of those organizations. I happen to be very close. My mom was a 30-year veteran AFT member. And so I hear from teachers groups on a regular basis. When I was on the school board, I would work very closely with them and Mike Moses to really cause communication to occur. I think a lot of times if we just communicate our needs, policymakers will step up and get you what you need, because we want you to do your job. And so I think those groups are going to be in the Capitol every day, in our offices, communicating with us on Zoom regularly. So I think that's a good way to do it. MASBA, I will say, I was a former member of MASBA, is a terrific advocacy institution, and the leadership of MASBA, and I used to chair a group called the National Association of Latino Elected Officials, so I know current and former MASBA leadership as well, and I have an opportunity to chair the Mexican American Legislative Caucus in the state legislature now. So, I feel like 87.2% of MASBA members have my cell phone number. So, yeah, just hit me up on the text, and we'll make sure we pass along any messages that you need done. But the infrastructure, I mean, I always tell school board members that they're one of the largest constituencies out there, just by virtue of the numbers, right? Now, over 1,000 school districts and lots of school board members out in the state. Thankfully, we are electing more and more school board members to the state legislature. There was a time there I was worried about the future of public education in the state, and we had a lot of folks, who would talk about public schools as government schools, and that narrative has really been tamped down, and the privatization narrative has been tamped down. And suddenly people are very appreciative of public schools, because we've got former superintendents like Gary Vandivers, we've got school board members, Republicans and Democrats, who have gotten elected to the state house and are sort of witnessing, as we might say in church, the good news of public schools.
Thank you. Representative Vandivers, thoughts on what superintendents and school board members might do short of taking classes of elementary students down to the Capitol this session?
Yeah, and like Representative Angie, I really miss having those students come visit. That's always a bright spot, for us here at the Capitol. But yeah, I always encourage my school board members, my superintendents, number one, get to know your legislator, the person that represents you, get to know them to the point that I tell mine, if you don't have the cell phone number of your legislator, then you probably need to work on that relationship, because you need to have that type of relationship. But the groups are great. I enjoy working with TASB, TASA, all of the teacher groups and all the educator groups, and that's a great source of information for us. But I don't think anything can replace that personal relationship you have with your representative and your senator. So I would just encourage you to develop that relationship to the point that if something is coming up in committee or on the floor, you can text that representative and say, hey, this is good for us, this is bad for us. And then, I know we try to respond to all of the education community that communicates with us, but I can assure you we respond to our constituents. Those who vote for us, certainly have our ear when it comes to these issues. So I think it's really important that we do that. And I would just, and I hate to kind of be on a negative note here, but I would kind of discourage everyone from the group emails where you get a packaged email and you just put your name on it and send it. I get thousands of those, and I don't open them, unfortunately, because I can't. So I think the more personal your touch can be, the better it will be received.
There you go. Really appreciate it.
I still get texts when education legislation is moving. Mike Moses will hit me up and say, hey, this is a good amendment. Michael Hinojosa has me on speed dial. He knows, and it's not one of these deals. Some people, if they reach out to me and I'm on the House floor and I got some busy things, I'll hit decline on my phone. Not my superintendents. Like any of my Carrollton, Farmers Branch, Irving, and especially Dallas, I'm on speed dial. You got me.
Yeah, I appreciate that. And the importance of relationships. So I want to thank you both. The way that we pulled you both in was that my next door neighbor is State Representative Eddie Rodriguez. So it was actually talking across the fence with him. There is something to be said for the importance of relationships.
Absolutely.
We're going to open up the mic now and unmute Tracy Fisher, a trustee from the Capel ISD, to ask a question, followed by John O. Oberly of Leadership ISD. Tracy, are you with us? Tracy, we're not yet hearing you. There you go.
I don't usually use this platform. It's awesome. I love learning. Don't we all love learning during COVID? All of our pivoting. Well, thank you both representatives for being here today. It's just so refreshing to see state legislators who really understand education and care about kids. And so, and thank you also to MASBA, Jamie, for having them today. It was a great session. My question is, I know there's some relief that there's not a lot of time to do things, I guess do no harm or whatever. And so my question would be, there is a priority in both houses, or both the House and the Senate, for this idea of community censorship, taxpayer-funded lobbying. Can you speak to that and what your read is? I know you're in the House, so you can speak to that more easily there, but that's all I had. Wanted to know your opinion about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Tracy. Thoughts on censorship, community censorship?
I'll take this one first. Yes, that it's really unfortunate that something that seems like we would all want to support, these taxpayer-funded lobbyists, these multi-million-dollar contracts, and that's what my constituents hear when they hear taxpayer-funded lobbying. What I hear when I hear taxpayer-funded lobbying, because I know what the bill says, is it's really an effort to silence a large sector of my constituency, and I can't support that. Will never support that. And it really, again, as I've said earlier, I represent a rural area in Northeast Texas. It really puts my rural counties, cities, school districts at a disadvantage. They can't travel to Austin and testify. They need representation from TASB and TASA and other groups. My county needs TAC to represent them. My cities, need their representation through their organizations. And so, I get that, if we have someone spending millions of dollars on lobbyists to work against their interest, I would think that probably is something we would want to look at. But that's not what this bill is about. And I think we need to keep our eye on the ball on this bill, personally.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Is it Representative?
This bill too. Look, and it's part of a theme of eroding, local control, and as someone who's been a local elected official, I'm even willing to countenance, local government getting it wrong. Like, it's okay. I mean, that's part of it, right? I may not agree with you. I may think what you're doing is wrong, but it's local government. It's the closest to the people and most responsive to the people. When I was a school board member, I would get stopped in the grocery store all the time. Now, if somebody stops me, they say, how are the cherry blossoms in Washington? I'm like, I have to tell them, no, I'm not that guy. I'm the guy who goes to Austin, and gets allergies in Austin. I'm not the cherry blossom guy in the U.S. Capitol. But that's a testament to the fact that people know who their local city council person is, their mayor, their school board member, and this serves as their voice in Austin. I cannot support this bill. And I'll say, finally, it's the ultimate of hypocrisy. The people support this bill and at the same time then support, the state office of federal, the Office of State and Federal Relations in Washington, D.C., which does the exact same thing on behalf of the state of Texas. Yes, we have 38 members of Congress, but we still have an Office of State Federal Relations in Washington, D.C. that is run out of the governor's office, and where they lobby Washington on behalf of Texas. And so you can't have it both ways. You can't say that that's okay, and then that the city of Dallas can't have somebody down in the Capitol advocating for our interests. No way.
Yeah. Tremendous. Appreciate that. We'll have two more questions here. We'll unmute Jono Oberly of Leadership ISD. They're always very interested in student voice. Jono, are you with us?
I am. Thank you so much, Jamie. Representatives, thanks so much for hanging out with us today. Really excited to get to hear a little bit. Always excited to get to hear about what is happening in Austin. I am here because I'm working with a group of students who is really interested in student voice at both the Capitol and the local level. And Representative Talarico, I think, will be filing a bill that seeks to be more intentional about involving students in the decisions that directly impact them. And I know that as we come out of COVID, there's sometimes a pretty big dissonance between what is actually happening in classrooms and what we adults believe is happening in classrooms. And so my question is, would you be in favor of more directly involving student feedback and voice in the process of decision making?
So I voted for that in the past. We early on in my legislative career, we put a student member on the UT Board of Regents, but just it's one example of the way we've done this. I know when I was on the school board, we had our teen school board, and we had a school board representative on there. So those are all things that I think make a ton of sense. Some of the best ideas I've gotten for bills have been from students, and some of the most ferocious advocacy I've gotten, from one time at Foster Elementary. They called me in. They wanted to call their school board member in and have a talk about the STAR test, right? And how much instruction time it took, how long the test itself was for them. We were having a fifth grader sitting in a room for 8 hours. They had to wait till everybody was finished with the damn test. And, it was that type of advocacy that hit close to home. And they didn't want to hear excuses from me. They wanted me to take action. And so I think it's a very effective form of advocacy, candidly.
Thank you, Representative Vandivers. Any thoughts on student voice?
Well, really not much to add to that. I totally agree that some of the best ideas come from those who are experiencing the policy we're making, and so or the policy that the local school board makes. And so certainly I think we would be doing a disservice if we did not allow that voice to be heard. And some of it I'm sure is great. Some of it maybe is not usable, but I think we, you know, we have that in the State House too. You know, some of it is really not of a lot of use either. So, but yeah, I would certainly support, you know, having the voice of students heard to a higher degree.
Awesome. Before we start to conclude, we want to respect your time, but I'll pull together 2 questions from 2 of our MASBA directors into a single question. We have Sylvester Vasquez of the Southwest ISD in San Antonio, who says, first of all, gracias to Rafael and Gary. Any possibility of getting funds to be able to increase staff pay? They have come through for us during these hard times and are literally doing double the work in many creative ways. We need to thank them through compensation. And then Director Raymond Mesa on our MASBA board from San Felipe del Rio, CISD, says, our students are stressed to a great extent by looking at their computer screen for long periods of time. What assistance can be provided for mental health programs to help with social emotional issues? How's that for 2 packed questions? I'll let you flip a coin and determine who goes first there.
Up to you, Gary. Let's just take a little piece. I mean, I want to affirm the on mental health. I mean, the pandemic has impacted my mental health. I'm just going to be very plain about it. There's a lot of stress that comes along with it, and I'm one of the lucky ones because I got to work from home during the entirety of the pandemic. People who had to go in, be away from their children, find childcare options among a dwindling number of childcare facilities that have been open, try to navigate school with suboptimal hardware, software, Wi-Fi. My hat's off to the people who are struggling, and there's no shame in that game talking about mental health because this has been a stressful time. You know, the things in terms of teacher pay, look, we're always going to do our best to try to find that. That's what HB3 was all about. We wanted to make sure we could get more money to our highly qualified teachers, people who are lighting it up in the classroom. I think where we need to find more funding this time around, in addition to sort of broadband infrastructure, is really compensating school districts for extra costs that they had during this pandemic. Because if this was a regular school year, we could say, hey, we have formulas in HB3 that we're going to contemplate your maintenance and operations budget. But there was a lot of new costs that was added to what you thought was going to be your regular budget this year. And the state, I think, should play a role in helping you do that. And if expanded mental health is something that school districts have had to spend money on, then yes, I think we should be partnering with you and helping you share those costs.
Thank you, Representative Vandivers.
Yeah, I agree. We know our school districts have incurred some additional expenses, and I think it's only fair that they not have to pull out of their budgets to cover those expenses. And I agree that our educators have stepped up and gone above and beyond, and we need to, I think, compensate them for that. We do know, and I have the honor of serving on both House Public Education Committee and Article 3 of Appropriations. And in Article 3, we have been discussing a lot about this $5.5 billion that's coming from the feds in CARES, and the importance of seeing that makes it to the school district, that doesn't get captured at TEA and used for other things. That money is intended to go to the school districts, and it needs to be in the school districts because that's where that's where those educators are that have been performing above and beyond. That's where the expenses have been incurred, and getting these meals out and getting hotspots out and bringing students in, and we know we are going to have some mental health needs as we move forward and as we bring our students back to school and continue to deal with the pandemic. We know there were mental health issues that need to be dealt with before the pandemic, and we know that this is just going to make it that much more important. So hopefully we can keep our eye on the ball on that $5.5 billion that's coming to Texas. We can get it out to the districts, and then possibly districts can choose to use a portion of that to maybe incentivize their teachers.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Appreciate your service on the House Public Ed Committee and on the Appropriations Committee. A question for State Representative Anchia. You serve on the Redistricting Committee. Now that the 2020 census is over, many of our large school districts will be redistricting as well. Anything we should know about redistricting at the state level, or any way that we should be involved?
Well, so I have something to report and then something to ask. Then the first thing I have to report is we're not going to be doing redistricting until later this year. You know, statewide redistricting data will come out, but we can't redistrict with that. That'll just tell us kind of top line what the growth in our population has been, racial and ethnic demographic information. We really need block level data to do redistricting, and so that likely not be available until September. We will be called into session probably in September, the minute that block level data is loaded into our redistricting software, and we'll have to knock out maps pretty quickly, and we'll knock out maps for Congress and then State House, and then State Board of Education. State House and State Senate have to be done during regular sessions of the legislature. That's sections 26 and 28 of the Texas Constitution. So it's entirely possible that we'll just have provisional maps going into the 2022 election cycle for State House and State Senate, but we will be doing redistricting later this year. I've been a longtime advocate of citizen-led redistricting commissions. When I chaired the City of Dallas Charter Review Commission, we came up with a citizen-led redistricting commission. And so what I would advocate to all MASBA members and all TASB members is don't let the politicians pick their voters, let the voters pick their politicians in redistricting, and really democratize that process, put citizens in charge of that process so they can draw fair districts and so that communities of interest can elect the candidate of their choice.
Thank you. Appreciate that. We want to respect the time of both of you here, so we'll come to any concluding words and or a final call to action. Maybe we'll go to our former superintendent first, State Rep Vandivers. Really appreciate you being with us. What concluding words and or call to action might you share with the school board members and superintendents who are with us today?
Well, first of all, let me say thank you. I've enjoyed this time and great discussion, and always great to join my colleague Anchia. He was not just my desk mate. I picked him as my desk mate as a freshman because I knew the wealth of knowledge and the experience that he brought, and that was a great decision. I learned a lot as a desk mate. He really helped show me the ropes of the legislature, and in a very fair way, I might add. So I thank him, and always great to join him anytime I have the opportunity. But no, as far as a call to action, I would just say, you know, you guys, you're involved because you're committed to public education. You're committed to the students that you serve. And I would just encourage you to stay involved, and again, certainly reach out to your representative, but feel free to reach out to me. If you do not have my cell phone number, I would be happy to share it with you. And you know, if I can answer any questions or can assist you in any way, I stand ready to do that. But just don't let your guard down. Stay active, stay involved, and stay with it. And public education has a bright future. We will come out of this better than we went into it. I'm convinced of that because of the people that I know are involved. And so look forward to it. Look forward to working with you guys in the future.
Tremendous. Thank you, State Representative Vandivers. State Representative Anchia, we recently published, MASBA published a 350-page work on MASBA's history, and you are part of that, having served on our MASBA Board of Directors. We'll make sure that both of you get a copy of that work. Any concluding words and or a call to action for all of our superintendents and trustees?
I appreciate Gary's kind words, and I would just say back at him. People often ask both Gary and me, hey, how is it working across the aisle? And I always respond, there's no aisle. You know, we sit 2 and 2 together all over the House floor, Republicans and Democrats, and we proved to Texas last session that we can set aside differences that we might have. And, you know, the differences always make the paper. It's when Gary and I vote together, you know, 75% of the time, that never makes the paper. And when we're trying to take off our Republican and Democratic jerseys and put on our Texas jersey, that makes me most proud of being a state legislator. We did that, and we proved to everybody we could do that in HB3. We have another opportunity to exert bipartisan leadership this cycle and getting the pandemic under control, competently executing on vaccine distribution, balancing the budget, and then making sure we have a reliable power source and electric grid. That's going to be ball game. You know, after that, we can wave the victory flag and go home, and let local school board members and superintendents soldier on without our interference, which is I know what you want us to do. Do no harm was said earlier. That's absolute truth. We need to be part of the team, part of the solution, and not part of the problem. So thank you, Mazba, for having me on. Que Dios les bendiga y gracias por la participación hoy. Gracias, Gary.
Gracias. Thank you both. Really appreciate all that you do for our public schools and for your representing our state down at the Capitol. We are going to transition to a 5-minute update from our friends at IDRA, the Intercultural Development Research Association. We want to welcome forward Ana Ramon and Chloe Sykes from IDRA. Thank you, State Representatives. So glad to have you with us. Ana and Chloe, thank you for representing the Texas Legislative Education Equity Coalition, TLEAC. Tell us, what do we need to know about what's happening in TLEAC and in advocacy these days?
Well, I'm happy to kick it off. What we did here last week was a long precursor to what was outlined by the phenomenal Chairman Anchia and Representative Vandivers, those highlights that came out of both House Appropriations and Senate Finance. So as you can imagine, hours worth of testimony were taken on Article 3 on both sides of the aisle or the chamber. And there was a lot of discussion, everything from hold harmless to possible retention of students to truancy. It really wasn't just a look at not only school finance, which I think something to highlight is what was exciting to see is there's a lot of interest in making sure that we're keeping up with the costs of what HB3 has, even though parts of HB3 hasn't been fully implemented. So we are getting those confirmations from our elected officials and legislators in Austin. But on top of that is something that Commissioner Morath and others have really hinted out even through the emergency response to COVID-19, and that was there will be need for long-term fixes to what COVID has unfortunately implemented in our school districts, and now on top of that, what this unfortunate snowstorm has caused. So there's a lot of questions about not only assessments, accountability, and even accountability if a hold harmless was to be implemented, which it sounds as if, and I'm gonna maybe look into my crystal ball, it sounds as if hold harmless is likely to happen. Those are probably conversations that are taking place between you and TA and maybe some of your elected officials. It just seems that those were the conversations that were happening in both House and Senate appropriations hearings and finance on the Senate side. But then some things that we really want to track and make sure we're on top of. The question of retention and unfortunately the loss of engagement around students is a huge concern. As Commissioner Morath laid out different categories of students that they put in different categories and students that they're not able to engage with. We're working on a brief that we'll be releasing as soon as it's ready internally on what these students look like based off of September 2020 data. I think that's the most recent data that we're going to have available to us. So once that brief is ready, of course, we'll share it with MASBA leadership for dissemination. But one thing that came up that was of concern to us and something we want to track very closely is how students could be retained for another year, or as they referred to it as redshirted. We have some information on what grade retention looks like and how that could actually be at a detriment, especially for Black and Brown students. So those are pieces that we'll be putting together. Some concerns around discipline and truancy is always top of mind for us. Truancy is becoming an emerging issue, but I think as was pointed out by Senator Huffman in Senate Finance, sometimes we're in a unique situation and, students are in different places and compounded not only with COVID-19, the mental health needs, and on top of that, just education in general, there's a lot of questions on making sure that we're not passing punitive measures that harm students and families. And there's been some phenomenal work by Senator Whitmire and others in the past on truancy. So rolling back those would be a major concern to us. And on top of everything else, the 60 by 30 is always a concern in looking at the enrollment rates, and that continuing education from K through 12 into higher ed is also of concern, where you heard some like flagship institutions are great on enrollment. Others, like for example, I think it was Texas Southern University said that their enrollment was down 22%. So those continuing conversations are going to be so crucial in making sure that K all the way up into higher ed is top of mind for us. And I definitely want to kick it to Chloe, who is our Deputy Director of Policy at IDRA, to share any other thoughts and go through like this pretty, hopefully a nice overview of some of the issues we're following both at IDRA and TLEC.
Tremendous. Thank you, Anna. Chloe, go for it. What do we need to know?
Sure. Well, Anna gave a really great summary of some of the think priorities that came up last week in the budget hearings and things that we're tracking within TLEC. I know it didn't come up in this conversation, but two main points, and I know we're pretty much at time, so I'll just focus on two areas. Are one, the true need for student and family engagement, and deeper student and family engagement from the local level to be elevated to the state level as they're making serious considerations for the continuation of virtual learning, of student retention or promotion, and of the meaning of assessment and accountability. So we, the current status quo is that STAR is proceeding forward, but there is also a simultaneous call to really reconsider what we mean by what we were looking for in meaningful assessment, and the student accountability measures that are tied to their test scores, primarily graduation requirements with end of course exams, as well as grade promotion and retention issues. So those are major issues that I know weren't part of this, but they are coming up in the legislative conversations. And briefly, so that the members of MASBA can know how to engage with the legislature. There are actually not many opportunities to virtually engage with the legislature, unfortunately, and this has been a major advocacy point for TLEC. The House, and we were able to hear from two representatives of the House, of course, does offer a public comments portal that allows public comments to be submitted by the public, and that goes to the committees, and it is not related to having a position on a bill. They are public comments on the issues. There's a 3,000 character limit for those, but they are part of the public record. The Senate does not have such a portal. And so in order to register a position on a bill or to voice actual testimony, that is still for the public requiring in-person attendance largely. In both the House and the Senate. So for our superintendents, for our school board members who are looking to bring their students and families in to these critical conversations at this time, really using your voice in digital campaigns, perhaps through MASBA webinars, and also engaging and reaching out to TLEC and IDRA if we can support you in that type of engagement are things we welcome.
Tremendous. Anna and Chloe, for the superintendents and school board members who want to learn more, are there any groups that they can be part of, any websites they should be checking out, any resources that you want to leave with folks who are with us today who want to be involved in these issues? Where can they turn?
Yep, well, go ahead, Anna.
We definitely welcome, Jamie, if you would like, if members of MASBA are interested in attending our weekly TLEC meetings, those are open. We have membership from all of our groups, TCEP or the Texas Center of Education Policy at UT, et cetera, join, and TSTA and AFT and other groups. So they're more than welcome to join us for our weekly updates. It's when we try to do some in-depth look at what happened. And then always, we're gonna plug IDRA. Please check out our website. Chloe and Christy, our comms director, have done just a phenomenal job of really creating a policy resource, not only for session, but long-term issues, exactly where I pulled some of the information I shared today. So please check out idra.org.
Tremendous. Thank you both for that update today. What a delight to have you here with us. One more time, we want to thank State Representatives Rafael Garcia, a former MASBA director, and also State Representative Gary Vandivers, a former superintendent, for being with us today. Special thanks to our friends at SFE, Angel Collado, and all our friends at Southwest Food Service Excellence. Find out more about them at sfellc.com. And finally, to all who've joined us this this afternoon. Thank you for being with us. We'll look forward next week to a conversation with our MASBA treasurer and TASB past president, Charles Stafford. So we'll look forward to welcoming you back next Monday at noon. Have a great day, y'all. Que pasen buenas tardes.
Bye.